over here, we're, for example, presenting these global risks and perspectives, and these are presented by the World Economic Forum for the beginning of 2022. And as we can see, for the most severe risks on a global scale over the next 10 years, we see that 5 are related to environmental issues, and 3 are directly related to social issues. Okay, so this means that 8 out of the 10, let's say, most relevant risks for the next 10 years are going to be related to ESG factors. Okay, and the exposure and the capability that we have to identify them in a correct way and with enough time means that if we are prepared enough to not only see that this is a risk and not only try to figure out which is the impact of this risk for our own companies, then we are also going to be able to mitigate and to act upon generating new capabilities in order to try to figure out how to best deal with these risks and how to have these pathways of, for example, uh, like trying to understand this pathways of new risks and assessments in a much more comprehensive way. Okay, so some of the examples that we see over here are precisely climate action failure, extreme weather, biodiversity loss in terms of the environmental issues, also human environmental damage that, for example, would be pretty much linked to the natural resource crisis. And this is also very important. The risks that we see over here, and even, for example, in the report that is provided by the World Economic Forum, are not isolated. Okay, but they're going to be embedded into this kind of context where we see increasing complexity within the way of managing these risks, that these risks are also materializing externalities from the traditional economic system. For example, in terms of this climate action failure, well, at the first glance, it may seem that we do not have, let's say, a possibility to incorporate this cost of emissions, for example, within our own operations or within a company's operations. But if we see climate change failure, and then we begin to see that there are taxes over carbon emissions, or that they are going to be, for example, a particular indemnizations or a particular amount of money that, for example, those companies that emit the most, or those countries that emit the most, must be paying for those communities that are the most affected by climate change, for example, then we begin to see how there is a way to be pretty much dealing with this externalization of new risks, right? Then they're also going to be involved in this kind of systemic changes, meaning that this affects the whole economic system, not only just one part of it, and the whole social system. And we have to be very much seeing that these environmental, social, and economic systems do not live, let's say, separate from each other, but they all constitute this kind of big system where the effects that we usually see may have further effects into these ESG dimensions. And finally, the role of collective action in terms of not only, let's say, individuals, but also in terms of how do we move as industries, or how do we move as companies in order to try to reach out these issues of sustainability that we have been dealing with for a long time.